Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
Back at you, Gloves Off, and today we have a great podcast. I got two great friends and two great podcasters in their own right, and we're just going to touch base on why we started doing podcasts, the interesting things we see, what has happened, which ways people are going, and how people feel about podcasts. Because there's one thing right now that's going on is more people in the United States are actually listening to podcasts and alternative news than the actual news that's out there. And that's for many reasons. How are we doing, Judge? You doing good?
Fine, thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
How are we doing this morning? You doing good?
Thank you.
And I'll tell both of you all, Judge Gassa, he has his podcast that's known as Laredo 24/7, and Ismael Rincon has his podcast known as Corner News. So we can just go ahead and just start going on. Here's the main question. How did you all come about in starting a podcast or saying, you know what, I'm going to do it? Well, why? And I'll explain mine.
Well, for me, one of the reasons, obviously, is because I saw that the news locally was not really getting all the views in. And they were just basically the same piece of news to the public. And there was no diversity of views. There's no, it's only what maybe the advertisers wanted people to hear. And now what the public wanted to know. What goes on in the neighborhoods, in the community, is totally different than what's going on at the county courthouse or in federal court. And so the real life that's going on is really out there on the streets. So I wanted to make sure that I provide at least a little slice of that diversified opinion that exists out there. Doesn't cover everything, just a slice. But what goes on, I keep telling everybody, what goes on at the courthouse, it's totally different than what's going on in the streets.
Absolutely. And you, Ismael? How did you start off? Because yours is an interesting podcast, and it's very much needed.
I started recording public officials when I had an incident with the local police. When that incident happened, I said somebody needs to cover this because nobody's doing anything here locally. So that's when I started recording police interactions, going to the courthouse, recording the district attorney's office, making phone calls, exposing what's happening not only on the streets but on the legal side and the district attorney and stuff. And I noticed corruption everywhere. Maybe corruption for you is different than for me. Somebody lying to the public, I see it as corruption. You're lying to the public to misinform them, to get their side of their story across, and trying to censor us, and giving different information to mainstream media to try and cover up their stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I started doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's kind of, you've done a good job, and we'll touch base on everything that goes on. I kind of started by the same way. I was asked by a cousin of mine who was starting a movement towards bringing some media together. He told me, why don't we do a podcast? And we just did a podcast, and we started Gloves Off. and we're now reaching our 800th episode, you know, and we've been doing it for a while. And we started doing how can we, you know, I got my kids involved and think of the name, and they came up with Gloves Off, and then they came up with a bunch of different names, and we looked up a little while, so we found out Gloves Off was kind of open, so we went Gloves Off, and so I got my kids involved, and we started seeing in my field, which you know, we've been teaching martial arts for a very long time, so I see a different type of demographics. I see all the social boundaries coming together as one. I see all the different problems of people coming to one. A lot of people are afraid of the crime that's going on, the issues that are going on. What do we do about this? What happens when we do this? You know what? I was stopped and I was manhandled by a police officer. You know what? I was stopped over here and this police officer treated me very well. We're trying to open up some stuff against bullying. So we started taking those community issues into play, you know?
Well, that's the way it works. I mean, we all bring something to the table. I'm sure that there's people who works at a bank or a plumber or a teacher out there who have their own views in life and they want to be able to express themselves to the public. And in my expectation, my levels, I see myself, at least I see 24/7 as a community newspaper, but online. But, you know, some podcasts are advocacy and some are just general and some are just about their personal opinions on certain issues. So there are all different types of podcasts. There's literally thousands of podcasts. But in Laredo, we still need more. I mean, there's only 3 podcasters here. I'm sure there's about maybe 6 or 7 total that are pretty active in Laredo. But in reality, out there in the community, there's all kinds of people, all kinds of stories, and really, all those stories should be covered as many as you can. But you can't get it done on the mainstream media because they only work for 30 minutes on TV, or they work with whatever space I got available on the newspaper, which is only 40% of that paper. 60% has to be media, has to be advertising. So you have to figure out a way to make it fit. So podcasting allows you to just be on at any hour, at any time. And I would encourage anybody who has anything to say to the community that they either come out on this podcast or create your own podcast. All you need is one camera, a cup of coffee if you want to, and just talk.
Absolutely. As you were saying, Judge, you know, it's great. There's a lot of niches for podcasts. You know, I've seen some here of ghosts, and I've seen some that people are out there getting in the news and going out there and being field reporters, which is good. People, you know, they're all over the place, and what you're doing with mediating and looking and seeing what happens with kind of seeing the opposite side of what occurs with a police stop or how the law enforcement treats you. That's brought a lot of attention because something's already happened. A lot of people have already felt it. And a lot of individuals do not know how to approach it when their rights are violated in a police stop. And it happens more often than not. We have some, listen folks, we have some great police officers out there. We have some excellent first responders. But we need police reform. And we really need to get down and we have to protect our good officers. But we have some knuckleheads out there that make the good officers look bad. And unfortunately, that's the case. And I think there has to be a melting pot for them to understand that people can be journalists. I mean, you have a podcast, you have the right to do that. You know, who asked that?
I agree in terms that people, all the podcasters should be treated as journalists because they do provide a public information to the public. Of course, some of us are advocates, some of us are just general, and some of us have our own personal opinions, but all of them provide information.
Absolutely.
And so, therefore, if we're providing it to the public, it should be considered everyone journalists. Recently, there was an event at UISD where only certain journalists were invited for a breakfast, I guess, to honor the journalists. And many of them went. And I don't know how many went. Honestly, I only could only see pictures. I was not invited because I'm not considered a journalist, or what my Facebook page not considered anything, I guess. But I know they did it to other people who had podcasts, and I thought that was condescending on the part of the school board, not the board, I'm saying the administration, for thinking that they get to decide who the journalists in town are or the people who can provide information. In reality, we serve a public good. Sometimes we miss it. It's normal. We're all human, but many times we get it right. And at the end of the day, people get to decide whether what we're putting out there is correct or not, and whether or not to follow or not to follow.
Absolutely.
You know.
You had an incident there, right? You were invited and then you were told what happened. Explain it.
Somebody sent me an invitation, a copy of the invitation, and it said I had to reserve my spot. So I did, and they confirmed. The following day, they sent me a memo that they created just for me. It said that somebody had sent the invitation to other regular people that are not media. They were referring to me. So when I get there, I didn't read the memo before I got there. So when I got there, they told me, "Oh, we sent you a memo stating that only real press and real media are allowed." Okay, so who determines that? They're like, well, the media, the companies that we do business on a day-to-day basis and this and that. I'm like, well, that's not how the press works. If you're out there gathering public interest or matters of public interest to disseminate to the public, you're considered press.
Absolutely.
Everyone's considered press.
And that's what happens. We have freedom of speech, and we have that. You're protected under the First Amendment, and there's a differences between, of course, libel and slander and all that other good stuff that goes through, right? We have to be very careful. But the way things go is what they were trying to say when I saw that, and when I saw that going on you, because I saw that. Now, to me, it was kind of insulting. Was a brown noser telling somebody else, "You're not one of the ones that brown noses to us," and unfortunately, that's the way I look at it. And if UISD has their own problems, and they have a lot of problems, and they have become a school-to-prison pipeline district, and they don't want to do anything about it. They're kind of just fidgeting around what it is. And it's our kids are the ones that are doing. That's my opinion, and the research that I've done, and I've done extensive research on this, believe me, and what's happening. And we're trying to change those policies because it's for the benefit of our youth. Our youth is our future, and there's a type of resentment that I've seen and I've felt towards our youth by the administration and certain individuals inside that district. And it's not the board. The board's kind of flustered. They're trying to figure out what's going on. This is administrative principals, the police. They're doing a pretty
I would say to you,
bad job.
I tend to agree, but I would also include the board.
Sure.
Because the board at the end of the day makes policy. And they need to understand that whether we like it or not, the majority of our kids are wonderful. They follow the law. They go to school. They get their diploma. But there's always going to be a percentage of our community that lag behind, and they have to set aside some money for those programs to help those people.
Absolutely.
And they don't seem to want to understand that that's part of the package of diversity within the school district. That most of the kids are good. Most are good. They're athletes.
They're good guys. They're good kids. And I look at them.
They don't have to be band members, but most of them are good. But there's always just a slice of kids who are difficult to deal with, and that's why you have special programs.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Now that you're saying that, I received a message about 2 days ago from a parent from a local school, a USD school. They were having issues at their home. I believe that the boy's grandma was in her was about to pass away, like her last days.
Yeah.
So they were having issues. He got into a fight in school, and they sent him to alternative school. The parent that sent me the message told administration that she didn't have a car to take him, because you have to take him personally to alternative school. And the principal said that you figure it out. You have to figure it out.
There's no consciousness in the kids. The discipline status there. It's they blame the parent for everything. They blame society for everybody else. But wait a minute, you all have our kids for 7.5 hours. That's under the U.S. labor laws. Between 7.5 to 8 hours per day, a school has our kids. And that's beyond. That's not even counting some of the extra activities with band. I had a band member, kid that comes here to my school. His band member, they were having him play band till 12:30, 1 o'clock at night on a Thursday night. And they were on a Friday night after the football game. Okay, we have to practice. Y que la fregada. Hey, bro, if you can't practice over there, toot your horn. What are you doing at middle of the night? The parents are out, the kids have to go to sleep. There's a lot of other students. How can I say, that unconsiderable kind of, hey, you'd have to do what we say, that type of overpowering, wait a minute. Let's get back to our kids are the ones that come first. Our kids are the ones that come first. I pray every day that this school district police department that we have doesn't shoot one of our kids because of the way they act, the way they acted with you, the way they've acted with everybody else. They're pretty. There's some bad apples in that area, and I just pray every day that some stupidity like that doesn't occur.
Well, I think most of the police officers are in good shape. I don't think we have to worry about most of them. There's a few who have issues, but I would again.
Should see the attitudes.
Well, they have bad attitudes. I get that part, and that's wrong. But I don't have any concern about taking my kids to the schools, either school.
No. District. What I'm talking about is having an issue with the way they act with our kids.
Well, they have bad attitudes. Some of them have bad attitudes. Yes, they do. That's a problem.
People. That's a concern.
People who have a gun, who license to carry a gun, sometimes, and with the color of law, which means they have that title of being a peace officer. Some can abuse that position.
They become bullies.
Well, some can abuse some, but I think that's where we
There's
need
a lot
parents. Parents need to file complaints against those police officers and go through the process of.
But nobody does anything, because when you file a complaint with a
again, I go back to the board.
Nobody does anything.
This is right here. The
There's
board.
no internal
There's
affairs.
a lawyer. And the problem is, if you don't like the board, the way they're acting, we need to remove the board members, and they get rid of the lawyers. Unfortunately, because a lot of the board members have friends in the community, they get reelected. And people just sort of forget, okay, ese problema tu hijo, no es el mío,
Even the board members are getting investigated federally, locally for crimes and for corruption.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we have problems, and we're not picking on UISDF per se, and we're not. It's just that's right now the vast majority of Laredo and Webb County is UISD. So it is a big issue when you have a lot of, but there's other elements in our community, and we live in a community that we need to understand that we have to show our kids respect. We have to teach them good manners. We have to do all that stuff, and most parents do that. A lot of our kids still live with the grandparent in the house. They live with a tia at the house, somebody else that's taking care of them, teaching them certain things. Hey, there's some bad kids. Of course, there's some bad principals. There's some bad cops. There's some bad
kids.
There's some bad everything. Bad judges, bad lawyers, bad everything.
So we can't just say that the kids are all wonderful. There's some bad kids in the community as well.
Absolutely.
So law enforcement has to deal with those bad kids too.
But we have it passing, and our law enforcement is not the greatest that we've had. I mean, this past year, what was it? They got hit with voter fraud, and people say, "Oh, no, that's not corruption. What are you talking about? They just got caught this time. How many times have they been doing it before, and how many different elections?" It's. I mean, we have problems, and they just kind of like, "Oh, well, wait a minute. Look what we have. You want to go have coffee with me on Saturday?"
That's why I say
no, I don't want to have
again,
coffee with
you
you.
go back to your city councilmen and your politicians out there. You put them at a higher standard. And you actually, if you don't produce, you don't get rid of those cops that are not doing well or who you're complaining about, then you need to get rid of those politicians, because at the end of the day, those politicians are the ones that allow this process to continue like that.
Absolutely. No,
I believe that the main problem, or one of the problems, is that people underestimate their power.
folks, at the end of the day, let's just be nice to each other. You know, what is it for you go into the grocery store, open the door, if the lady's coming at you? You know, my son was a kid back then. He was about 10 years old. You know, we were walking into a store and I opened up a door and some lady passed by. And he said, hey, she didn't say thanks. Don't worry about it if she says thanks. You do the deed. Doesn't matter if she says thank you or not. You do the deed. And that's what happens. We have to teach our young men how to shake hands. We have to teach our young men what a word is. And
Women too, sir.
we have to, and women too, yes. And we have to teach them how to behave. How no is no, this is this, right is right, wrong is wrong. And it has to start back at home. It has to start back, you know, discipline. I tell people discipline.
But public officials need to start treating other people like people.
Absolutely.
And,
Well, they do say during the campaign.
Exactly.
But they should do it more often.
You know,
Like I said,
yeah.
at the beginning of this show, I made it a point to let you know that the courthouse and City Hall and public office positions, it's totally different than what happens over in the public.
Sure.
And they need to tie in, they need to become a little bit more, not only transparent, but they need to be a lot more friendlier and more giving to the regular public, because these are the ones who elect them to positions.
And that's
And
another
they show that.
that's another different corruption in there in the court system that I have noticed.
Oh yeah.
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 So,
I mean, it's never ending. It's that they opened up Pandora's box was open a long time ago, and corruption came out, and corruption's running around all over the place. It's everywhere. And the only person, remember the old saying, evil strives when good men do nothing. And you have to stand up to what's wrong. And sometimes you're going to get your feelings hurt because people are going to no longer talk to you. People are going to say that you're an asshole. They're going to say all kinds of stuff about you. And because you're standing up for a right, but believe me, you're doing something right. The man upstairs is looking down at you, and everybody else that has been walking through your path, walk through your path as well. So stand up and do right. Now, I don't condone you insulting anybody when you're trying to do it right, like F you, this, or you, whatever. That's a different story. Just do your right.
And for all those religious public officials that say that Jesus wouldn't do that, Jesus protected prostitutes, people in jail, sick people in the hospital. So
Those who could not defend themselves.
exactly.
And he whipped everybody out of the temple now.
All the priests.
And that's something that people forget. Again, we're not going to fix anything. This was an excellent conversation. We're going to continue talking. But folks out there, if you like it, press like, follow Judges 24, Laredo 24/7. Follow Ismael's Corner News. They're very beneficial for our community. Hamrod wasn't here. Follow Hamrod as well. There's a lot of things going on. If you all have a small business that you have to produce, I'd like to hear your story. Come on out here. We'll set up a time. If you have any issues with anything that's coming out there, come out here. We can talk about it. Maybe we can set you or clear a road for you guys to talk with, because we do have some good public officials out there that are doing the right thing, that are trying to make things better. But again, like I tell you, when you have a good apple in a rotten barrel of apples, you're not going to make them right again. So, you're not going to make those good. So you have to take that good apple out and place it by itself and protect it. And we can't do it any other way around, because one rotten apple will ruin a barrel. And that is a very great thing. Until next time, much peace.